You are guinea pigs of the most esteemed wonderment. Hurrah! Welcome, a live audience and everything. Welcome to a world premiere, and thank you so much for being here. We're here to do a live recording of the Good Listening To show and podcast, where we find out the story behind the story of my guest. And of course, this evening is with two guests. We've got the story behind the story of being Box E. We are live on YouTube and Facebook as we speak. And also there's going to be some Q&A at the end as well. I'll better throw a brick at you in a really good way. If you have any questions at the end when you've listened to the story behind the story of being Box E, then this will be yours to hold and answer a question towards the end. And yes, just to give you a bit of context, the Good Listening To all takes place energetically in a space called The Clearing, which is a serious, happy place of my guests' choosing, and then all the storytelling metaphors that the podcast is suffused with unpacks from that sort of central energetic space. So we're going to find out in a few moments what Tess and Elliott's clearing or happy place of theirs is. So you're going to find out the founder story, the story behind the story of being Box E. There's a tiny bit of theme tune music which gives the sheep and the stoat and the billions of people watching from home a bit of context. Also listen out, because this will explain the route map of the podcast too. I'm Chris Grimes, I am your host. Could we now cue up the music, please? And whack up the vol.
Welcome to another episode
A bit louder.
of the Listening To show, your life and times with me, Chris Grimes.
That's me.
The storytelling show that features The Clearing, where all good questions come to get asked and all good stories come to be told. And where all my guests have two things in common. They're all creative individuals, and all with an interesting story to tell. There are some lovely storytelling metaphors. A clearing, a tree, a juicy storytelling exercise called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, some alchemy, some gold, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, and a cake. So it's all to play for. So yes, welcome to the Good Listening To show, your life and times with me, Chris Grimes. Are you sitting comfortably? Then we shall begin.
Hurrah! So, big round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Good Listening To show. And would you please welcome tonight's very special guest to find out the story behind the story of being Box E. Can you please welcome our hostess with the mostest and the chef with the mostest, the head chef, Elliott Lidstone. Would you please welcome our guests? And could we also, as you're a live audience with a pulse and everything, an extra round of applause for the fare you've just consumed. So you are extremely welcome. This is the brighter ones amongst you will know exactly which of these two people that we are. We have Tess and Elliott Lidstone. Thank you so much for being here. So, how's morale and what's your recipe of the day? What have you just conjured up for our audience this evening?
Today there's been main course being hake, fillet of hake with butter beans and pickled peppers. Starters of grilled omelette with swede and mustard, something like that. And panna cotta with poached plums. That's a little
Panna cotta with poached plums.
Yes.
We like that. Wonderful. And so it all began 13 or 14 years ago. I like the fact on your website you can't quite decide. It was either 13 or 14 years ago.
And the website's a little bit out of date, so it's actually a few more years than that.
But wind forward the 13, 14 years, your genesis point was to decide to open up a savings account with the idea you'd get a stove, and then that would someday be at the hearth of your restaurant. And 13, 14 years later, here we are within 2 containers within Bristol's cargo area, and your dream has come true. We're going to bounce you along the storytelling metaphors of the Good Listening To show. We'll start off with a clearing. We'll find out where your restaurateuring clearing is, and then I'll arrive with a tree in your clearing, and I'll shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out. And you've been kind enough to have thought about your answers to the question 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We've had 5 minutes to have thought about 4 things that have shaped you and what you have become, 4 things that inspire you, and then 2 things that never fail to grab your attention. And that, borrowed from the film Up, is going to be a bit squirrels and monsters of distraction that never fail to grab your attention. And then finally, a quirky or unusual fact about yourselves. Then we'll talk about alchemy and gold. There's a couple of random squirrels, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, and a cake. So it's quite literally all to play for. So let's get you going. What is a clearing or serious happy place of your choosing for you as Box E?
Well, I'll answer for me first of all. For me, it's definitely a cityscape. So I grew up in Bristol here, and I've always pretty much lived in cities, and seeing a city skyline is just, to me, it's a really calm thing. Even though there's a lot of busy stuff going on, it seems to me it's just kind of like the busy stuff can happen, but you can still be at peace in a city, and there's a lot of comfort to be taken from the fact that a lot of people are around you doing busy things, but you can be calm in it. And sort of that notion of parks in cities and the roles they play. To us in lockdown, Ashton Court became like our saviour, basically. We've got a tiny garden, and we spent a lot of time in our tiny garden. And yeah, there's something about it that just kind of makes you feel, it's fine. And actually our house has a view to the suspension bridge from the roof. And when I put the girls to bed, I always kind of look to the suspension bridge, and it's like, you're still there.
It's an anchor point in Bristol, but also for you as well.
Yeah.
And also, you mentioned the lockdown. During the lockdown period, you were doing some extraordinary stuff and how you lent in. You didn't just lock down, stop and look at Ashton Court and the bridge. Just talk us through some of the wonderful stuff that you started and decided to do during the pandemic.
Well, I was helping on a Tuesday up at Square Food in South Bristol, helping to cook 150 meals a day. But I was doing that for a Tuesday, which was quite hard work. It was a lot of food to prepare, and quite scary actually. The volume of stuff that was like a small kitchen, a small group of volunteers were doing.
The girls would say to Elliott when he got home, like, "What did you do, Daddy?" And he'd be like, "Oh, I mashed 50 kilos of potatoes, or like made 8 trays of lasagna." And you're like, "Oh, okay," which is a complete departure to here, of course.
Yes, to the wonderful subtle nuance of what happens here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people are here enjoying a taster menu this evening, and that's at least 7 courses that arrive.
Yeah.
So going from sort of micro to macro, how was it doing? Plating up 140 portions of lasagna.
Well, it wasn't even doing it. It was all into sort of foil containers. So like not even presentations, all into foil containers, and then they were distributing it to different families. So yeah, it was just like a sort of eye opener really to the sort of extent of what people needed really. So I was doing that on the Tuesday, and then Tess was doing huge projects. And
I just put together food parcels for young care leavers, so 16 to 25-year-olds who had left care but were in supported accommodation across the city but needed extra help. So we put together essential food primarily, but then every week I would do a recipe for them, and they could go onto their Facebook group and watch me cook in our kitchen home, how to make the recipe, and they included the ingredients for that, just so that they had a little something extra in their week.
And you're officially, you have a particular charity or several charities that you're contributing to, one of which is about people on the cusp of homelessness. You've just run a half marathon. Congratulations. And I think you got in at under 2 hours, didn't you, as well?
1 minute over!
No!
Don't rub it in.
Well, no, there's nothing to rub in. That's better than I could ever even think of doing.
At the end, I was so sad. And the girl said to me, "Mummy, why are you sad?" I was like, 1 minute. Come on.
But I still think it's an amazing achievement. And what's the charity?
It's for Caring in Bristol. So they are a homelessness charity, but they're very, very proactive in sort of finding positive solutions. So not just providing a shelter, but providing young people in particular with access into employment, access into accommodation of their own.
And so would a caring for you also be a cityscape or different?
To be honest, the clearing for me is kind of anywhere. It doesn't really have a place. It's kind of more of a moment with like family. When you've had either, again, you could be in a city, like a nice walk in the city, or you could be on the beach with the wind blowing, or sitting down for a family meal. It's kind of not so much a place. It's like a feeling really, I suppose. You know, it's like a sort of blanket of the family. So, you know, me, Tess, and the two girls. Little pockets, kind of all. And when I think of like a happy place, that all kind of merges together, where it's like on the beach or cityscape, or you know, at home.
And I love, by the way, how on your own Twitter feed you talk about, it's just, you've said it's me and the missus in a tiny shipping container restaurant on Bristol docks, and then you say a dad to two gorgeous girls.
Yeah.
So I think the sort of familial cloak that you wrap around everything that you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, one thing about here that I was intrigued by, you've got a swanky or snazzy solid worktop called Sandra. So can you just talk us through why she's called Sandra?
Because it was an S. She's a stove. And we needed to, I mean, like you say, we'd saved for I don't know how many years towards our own restaurant, and we in one specific savings account there was almost exactly the right amount to buy the stove that Elliott really wanted.
Yeah.
The stove, which
stove.
is there to this day.
Yeah, so all of the money went into that, and it seemed like it had to have a personality, because you just like spent everything in the savings account on this one thing. But there is a picture on our Instagram that I bring up from time to time, normally around this time of year, because this is our almost anniversary of opening the restaurant. But that stove, when they delivered it, they had it on straps on a crane, dangling over the terrace here, and I was like,
And that was Sandra's arrival.
that was,
It was an extremely windy day as well, and people were panicking.
But they got Sandra in, is the
got her
great
in,
news.
yeah.
And we've all enjoyed Sandra this evening vicariously by the fact you've cooked on her. So I didn't know whether it was the snazzy worktop that sits next to the mothership that is Sandra, but it's the mothership.
It is the mothership.
And by the way, talking of whipping photographs out, I've just got to show the audience this picture, and to anyone watching at home on YouTube as well. This is just a picture to dream about. I'm thinking you might be about 12 there, but just talk us through the picture.
I'm 7 in that picture.
It's all the makeup.
It's
That's
all
what
the makeup that my brother put on me to make me into his waitress. My brother is also a chef, and you know, some of our earliest games that we would play would be cooking, but then it had to go one step further. So in this photo, we have made our own restaurant in the house that we were living in at the time, and we were feeding my mum and dad, and I was the waitress and he was the chef, and that was always our dream, that we would have a restaurant. And I mean, we even roped in my mum and dad, but neither of them had any desire whatsoever to work in a restaurant ever.
And they didn't cough up the money for Sandra either, I'm hearing.
No, but yeah, then it went on from that. I mean, we've always sort of talked about having our own restaurant, and Elliott's wanted to be a chef for most of his life as well, and it's like these things, and you see it echoed in your own children, and the games they played. Like my brother and I, we would cut out of cardboard. We would cut like all you'd need to make a pizza, and like sprinkle the topping on the pizza, and it was real, like it was a thing. And our girls play shops and restaurants and things like that, and sometimes they come out with phrases and I think, oh wow, you've really grown up in a restaurant, because but my story, which I always repeat, is when our eldest was a very little baby, and Elliott was carrying her in our kitchen at home, and I heard him saying to her, "Don't be a chef, don't be a chef, don't be a chef." It's like, well, she will now, just to sort of spite you.
Because as you say, it's at least 13 hours a day in the kitchen. You're not a chef because you're at all work shy.
No.
And of course, the big difference is most people try and be asleep for that amount of time per day. But there you are, not being work shy, being the chef that you were. And obviously, this isn't just me whipping out an embarrassing photograph of you. This is actually on your website. And you can't have known her, obviously, at this point.
No.
But did you think, with hindsight, look, that's my future wife right there? I mean, that is the dream.
Yeah.
And so resonantly, you've always thought about that. I mean, in my own family story, my daughter is a teacher, and in her DNA, it goes right back to her lining up her her toys with lesson plans. So I like the fact that it's really steeped in your, you are meant to become. And you're the hostess with the mostess here. Are you a chef too? Do you help cook as well?
Not here, but I do cook at home.
Of course you do. So we've got you both in your respective clearings, your serious happy places. Yours is more of the familial cloak, if you like. We've got Sandra the worktop, which is another happy place, obviously, because you've got to spend a lot of time there. And you're in your cityscapes. You could have been in London once upon a time, couldn't you? Because it was Hackney where you started.
Yeah.
And I like the story of, in your own sort of backstory, is that rather than grow the sort of Shoreditch beards and belong in Hackney, the West Country was calling you back to living back in Bristol. So where were you both from originally?
I'm from here, literally like a 15-minute walk down the road.
Yeah, I'm from Plymouth, so not a million miles away either.
And how did you meet?
Well, I was cooking at a place called the L'Ortolan, just outside of Reading, with Tess's brother, and we sort of met one afternoon or one evening in London. Went for a bank holiday weekend, and then just went from there really.
We went from there.
We went from there. Yeah.
And you can hear, I don't know if you can hear, there are some bells in the background there, sort of evoking, oh yes, and later on we got married and here we are. 2 children, still Sandra is still there, which is great. Presumably one of your children isn't called Sandra.
No. That would be odd.
That would be odd, wouldn't it? Absolutely. Okay, so we're in your clearing. Now I'm going to arrive, if I may, with a tree in your clearing, and a bit sort of waiting for Godot-esque, because of my acting background, this is a bit Beckety. I'm going to arrive with the tree now and shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out. You're already giving me lots of stories and giving us lots of stories, but we're going to talk about 4 things that have shaped you, first of all, then it'll be 3 things that inspire you. I'll talk you through the route map a bit, but what would you like to say about 4 things that have shaped you and what Boxy has become?
Well, for me, early on getting into food, I used to go to the Scouts, and I used to be obsessed with it. And we used to go, every kind of other weekend, we used to go camping, and I used to cook for a troop, like seven young lads, and I just really kind of started to enjoy it, and people seemed to like, it was nice seeing how people enjoyed the food. So after that, I kind of made choices, to go to college. What was my next step? So I went to college. But yeah, it was from that really that sort of really fired my sort of appetite to start cooking.
And it was the Scouts, you say?
Yeah.
Yes, they did
Yeah.
that for you. So were they looking for someone to take on the mantle of the cook, or that's what you just stepped into?
Yeah, that's part. So whenever you go camping, they'd be split in different patrols, and you'd have like the responsibility to cook for your little patrol. So yeah, it was just a nice thing being able to see, and sort of you're given all these raw ingredients when you're kind of like 12, 13, and next thing you're feeding people, and it's just like a real sort of it felt really special. Yeah.
And sort of being like the catering core in what you've done just during the pandemic, going back to that sort of mass production.
Yeah.
I know that's not for one Scout troop, but that's for the whole city.
Yeah.
So I completely get the reason why you would just step into that.
It's just a lovely feeling to be able to sort of go from sort of nothing to feed people. It's just really special. Isn't it?
And Fair Share Southwest is another charity that you're involved in as well. Is that what you were doing at Ashton Court, or sorry, at the stadium you were doing the cooking?
Yeah, it was involved with that. Well, Tess can sort of elaborate on that more.
Yeah, so Fair Share deal with food waste. So they get waste product from a supermarket, and by that we mean one of the labels might be off, and so a whole pallet of food has been rejected, and they take it and redistribute it to organisations that really need the food. So they were supplying me with some of the food, and we've supported them for a long time. I mean, it's one of those amazing organisations that reaches so many in society. So they work with old people, they work with children's centres, they also do work with homeless people, a lot of community groups, and also it tackles food waste as well, which is really important to us.
Yes. Wonderful. So any shapage from you now as the second thing that shaped you?
Do you want to do your second one?
Yeah. Well, for me, sort of becoming a father, really, I think that was like a really big, for anybody, obviously. But yeah, it's like really sort of as soon as we had our children, it's like, just changed everything. I think I don't know how. It's hard to say really. Just obviously you're caring for more people, and it's like kind of inner thing. But yeah, that was a big part of my life, I think. However, which way it sort of shaped me, I'm not sure, but it's a very positive thing, and yeah.
And again, gives you a really specific, honed purpose.
Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
obvious and
Yeah,
implicit.
absolutely. Yeah.
100%. It was like we split it, so we did two things that have shaped us each, and 100% becoming a mum changed my life. And I remember when our eldest was born, she was born at home, and Elliott had to pop out and get something for me, and he put her in her Moses basket on the floor in the bathroom, and I was in the bath, and I remember looking at her in her Moses basket and thinking, like, my life will never be the same again. And it was like that, you know, that sudden realization that you will never not think about somebody else. You'll never not be responsible for somebody else, and it's a completely different responsibility to a partner or a friend, or
Yes.
you know, it's that sort of whoa, and it's massively overwhelming as well. And our life was sort of kind of tricky because, as you said, you know, Elliott goes and works very long hours, and now we work a lot of those hours together, so it's different. But at the time, you know, he would go, leave the house, you know, in the morning and come back 15 hours later, and I would have had like a small newborn, and I didn't really know anybody and who had babies in London. And I remember thinking that I would never sort of get over the like immense feelings I had felt, like the sadness and the emotion of it. And I remember thinking, like, how do people get over having babies? Like, how do you move on in life? But then you also meet the most incredible people, like some of the people who came into my life at that time, and that, not, you know, they're not people that I'm in touch with anymore, but just like amazing women who I just thought, wow, like so those women in that context totally changed my life. But further back than that, I would have to say my life was shaped very much by sort of political activism and growing up with a very politically active mum, and having a social conscience and knowing from a very early age that we're all part of a society, and you can choose to be inactive, but then you don't get a say in, you know, well, you shouldn't necessarily have a say in what goes on, or you can't sit on the sideline and moan unless you're sort of doing something about that. But yeah, I mean, one of my earliest memories is going on like a Tolpuddle Martyr rally, shouting Maggie, 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 out, out, out.
Boom.
And I think that stayed with me very much, and it formed like my outlook on life, and being, you know, being young and sort of thinking that you can change the world. And it sounds silly, the older you get, you're kind of like, oh, why did I, like, even at, you know, early 20s, I moved to London, and I worked as a journalist, a political journalist, and I went to cover, it was when Hugo Chavez came over from Venezuela, and he was invited to City Hall, and we had to cover the press conference. And I remember thinking, oh God, you know, like, we can all be revolutionaries, we can all change the world. And then you get older and you're kind of like, like I can't change the world. And it's like actually quite heartbreaking. You're like, oh.
Although you've not become static in that regard, because everything you're on, you know, with sustainability, you're part of the community, you're becoming a hub, which is providing for the local community. Yeah. So that proactivity and that action is still really implicit in what you both have committed to.
Yes.
So that was very good divvying up of two each of the shaping of the four things that have shaped you. Now we'll go on to, and if there's any overlap, that's completely fine. But what about three things that inspire you now?
Well, I sort of thought long and hard, thinking, well, that from a chef's background, and I wanted to like all the chefs that I've really recognised, and you know, that sort of always looked up to. But actually, when I kept on thinking about what it was, and I kept on coming back, I'm not a husband in trouble. It's nice being a husband to
That's so lovely.
someone else.
I don't know if you're expecting to be the main inspirer there, but that's lovely.
No, he was very cagey when we were talking about that.
Wonderfully generous and much deserved, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's again like Elliott. Actually, you kind of think, oh, which big character in life, but actually, family is massively inspirational. And I kind of thought, well, for me, it's predominantly like women of the past or still present. My grandma, women of the past or still present. My grandma turned 100 this year.
Wow.
And she's just amazing. And I think of women especially, but men as well. I mean, I was very close to my granddad as well, but a generation who went through so much and just cracked on with it. I remember when she got, I think I was a late teenager when she got her first automatic washing machine, and we helped her buy it and put it in her house, and I remember just watching her watch this washing machine. And we used cloth nappies on our babies, and my grandma was fascinated by the shaped cloth nappy, and she said, oh well, of course we used cloth nappies, but terry squares, and we didn't have a washing machine. We boiled the nappy on the open fire in a pan, and you're kind of like, oh, okay. You can pick a lifestyle choice of doing cloth nappies for my babies because we're trying to do our bit for the planet, but
yes.
I can put them in an automatic washing machine. I'm certainly not making a fire and boiling them in a pan. It's just things I just think, wow, you've lived through so much and not really moaned about anything.
And how is she with technology now? Is she just all over it now and she's got iPads and iMacs?
No, not at all. Actually, she's she doesn't need it.
She's stoic and minimalist.
Yeah, totally.
And what's your grandmother's name?
Gladys.
Of course it is. That's a brilliant grandmotherly name.
And our eldest, she's Gladys Evelyn, and our eldest, we called her middle name is Evelyn. And she always says to me, oh, because people, she's 9 and people are like, what's your middle name? And she says, why did you call me Evelyn? Because our youngest, her middle name is Rose, and which has reasons for that as well, not just it's a pretty name, it's Rose, but
is that another grandmother or family legacy?
No, that's because she was born literally just after the 2015 general election, where it went from being a coalition to being an all-conservative government, and I had always thought, oh, I don't think it can ever get worse than this in your lifetime, so it'll be fine. But so she's got Rose because it's a Labour Rose, but also she was meant to be born in May and she was born in June, and June's birth flower is Rose.
So great research there, and you've backed it up with a really good story and account.
But our eldest is kind of oh, Evelyn, and I said, it's so special to have your great grandma's, Gladys was a stretch too far, I'm afraid.
Yeah, Gladys is one of those names that's not coming back in a hurry, is it? But it's a beautiful name.
So she's got Evelyn from my grandma, and but yeah, so I would say my grandma and that generation of people who just did, if you've ever listened to any of the interviews with Edith Agar, the Holocaust survivor, well, she doesn't want to be known as that, but it's just oh, well, I just do it, or she says this, you don't put off to until tomorrow what you could do today, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and it's that same attitude. So if I'm sort of putting things off, I'm oh, what would that generation do? Because it wouldn't be sort of
that's a great
around.
Thing to live by. What would Gladys have done is a really good way. So your grandmother's still there, is a great influencer to you.
Yeah, massively. And I love the fact that our girls are old enough to have memories of her, which is very special. And Elliott's grandma's still alive, and my granny died in the pandemic, so they've got 3 great grandmother figures in their lives, which is incredible, really.
Some very strong women in both of your stories.
Yeah.
So we could be on for a third thing that's influenced you?
I would say my girls and the power that they have and the determination and things that I think, wow, you're so much braver and willing to do more than me, and it's amazing to see that in something that you've created in a way. Like,
yes.
Not that I'm taking the credit for it at all, because they are totally their own people.
But you're giving them obviously the freedom to express themselves and
Yeah.
go sort of out into the big wide world. Not feral, but going out and exploring.
Yeah, and it's inspirational to see them explore the world themselves and see how, see their take on it and what they make of life and things like that.
And how were you at travel? Because obviously you're from Bristol, you went away for a while, you're back in Bristol. So have you travelled a lot in your life as well?
Yeah, fair bit, yeah.
Yeah, we've been on quite a few good holidays.
Yeah.
Pre-boxy,
Pre-children.
pre-children, pre-boxy.
Them's were the days.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. In fact, we were, Elliott turned 40 in the April of the pandemic, and we had finally got to the point where we'd been open long enough that we could close for 2 weeks, booked a holiday to Thailand for Elliott's 40th, and then COVID happened, so...
Oops, so have you got a cunning plan to get back out there now?
One day.
But no selling Sandra, that's not allowed, obviously. So now we're still in the canopy of your trees, we've done the 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you. Now it's 2 things that never fail to grab your attention, and borrowed from the film Up, this is a bit, squirrels, what never fails to grab your attention, irrespective of what else is going on in your, as we've heard, very hectic lives.
Well, for me, I'm a big lover of socks.
Socks?
If I see a nice pair of socks,
Look,
I've got a nice pair on today. To be fair, normally when I'm at work, I'm very conservative. I just wear very boring ones, but on my days off, I'm a big fan of socks.
And often people say, what's a crap gift you've been given? And we do this in the comedy improvisation show I'm in, and often people go, socks! And we often sing songs about crap socks, but you love your socks.
Oh, I love a good pair of socks, yeah.
So how many pairs are we rocking, would you say?
Oh, I've got no idea. I've got...
Too many.
Yeah, too many, yeah. The sock drawers, it's getting a bit too much, but...
It's socks and spoons for Elliott. I mean, spoons is quite a common thing for chefs, but like he's always on the lookout for the perfect spoon to do a quenelle with or something like that. So if we go to a charity shop, he's always like, oh, I'm just going to have a little look in or we go to a different supermarket that we don't normally go to. I'll just have a look in the spoons.
Don't go to IKEA. They'll seduce you on the way out with spoons. Oh, I need a spoon. And by the way, there is a story which you need to tell us, and I don't know if you're going to get onto that, but the day when Elliott gave you a knife and thought it was a good idea. So,
Elliott. Well, I think Elliott got thoroughly annoyed when he was coming to my flat that there wasn't a decent enough knife to chop things with. So as a present, I can't remember whether it was a Christmas present or my birthday present, he bought me a knife for him to use when he came to visit me.
So these were in the courtship days. I'm going to spend a lot of time with you.
I used it this morning, in fact. So.
Lovely. So what's the type of knife we're talking about?
Oh, it's nothing even very special. It's just
that makes it worse.
Just
it's like got a black plastic handle.
Good all rounder.
I'm glad the knife was to do with chefing rather than you going down a slippery slope of a Bonnie and Clyde knife gang or something like that. Or a vaudeville actor throwing knives at each other, which is good too. Were you going to tell that story anyway? Sorry if I stole your thunder on that one.
No.
So just remember the knife story, which we've now got through. That's great. Now, another squirrel from you, please?
Plants for me.
Yeah, I was going to say Tess is a plant fiend. Yeah.
And our girls are like, you're not allowed to buy any poor plants. I'm like, oh, this one. Or if I just sneak it in, you won't notice. And they're like, what's that new plant?
And is this from home as well, this wonderful pumpkin you put in the background here? It's quite Halloween-y, obviously. I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we lose you, you're in a garden centre somewhere, or...
Yeah, or in our garden.
Yeah. Yeah. If we're in a garden centre, we're there for hours.
And Monty Don, does he do it for you as well?
Well, you're speaking to somebody who works in a restaurant, so the chance to watch garden as well is sadly not
luxury.
doesn't often
That'd be luxury
happen.
for you.
But yeah.
Okay, so now in the final of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we're going to talk about a quirky or unusual fact about you both we couldn't possibly know until you tell us.
When I was growing up, I always used to, well, when I was younger, I spent a lot of time in the pub, which was always, as you do. And used to get really good at flipping bar mats, so I used to be able to get a stack. I was trying to think how many I could do. I'm pretty sure I could do about 50. And you'd sort of put them on the edge of the table and flip them over and catch them.
Ooh, yes, I can do that. I've done it with 1 and my son was quite impressed, but 50 is pretty impressive.
There's a sort of happy medium that if you've got too many or too little and it's too hard, and then when it gets too much it's really hard. It gets really hard. But yeah,
But you've gone next level if you can do 50.
Yeah, I'm pretty
I
sure I was
feel like
racking
we
my
need
brains on.
50 beer mats to test if we can actually do it.
Test. Sorry, that's
But
you.
Elliott's amazing at catching. Like, you just chuck something in the kitchen and he's like from behind.
I
Like,
should have been a cricketer.
Very impressive. Good. That's another nice, you snuck in a really good extra fact. You're really good at catching. That's really good. And what about a quirky or unusual fact for you, Tess?
oh, it's so hard. I want it to be like, ooh, a big reveal, like, you know. But I would say, I don't know. Like, I was going to say that I'm a very emotional person, and like I think like massive sort of like things where other people are sort of like laughing and happy with joy, like I don't know, things like the marathon, the half marathon. You know, like people coming together just makes me like cry, and I like try and be very subtle about it. I'm like, phew.
You get overwhelmed when there's a common cause with a crowd involved.
Yeah, things like that. Or like when our eldest does a gymnastics competition or something like that, and it'll be like, way, great, and I'm sat there like, woo. It's just like so, I don't know. So yeah, sort of.
It's very celebratory of others' ability.
Crier.
A perpetual crier. I like that.
But just silent, happy tears.
And there's a very thin dividing line between crying and laughter, isn't there? So
Oh,
it's obviously
yeah.
a happy sort of
Yeah.
happy Venn diagram that I've just created.
But I also blame that on having children, because I think I became way more emotional after I had the children. So.
Wonderful. So we have done the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're still in the clearing. Now we're going to stay in the clearing but move away from the tree. And now we're going to talk about alchemy and gold. When you're at purpose and in flow, Tess and Elliott Lidstone, what are you absolutely happiest doing in what you're here to reveal to the world?
For me, as boring as it is cooking. Genuinely, like I was saying back to like the original story about being in the Scouts, just sort of seeing people when cooking, whether it's for family or at work or wherever it is. Yeah, just that kind of common thing that people are happy, making people happy from it, and yeah, it's quite. And again, you see stuff, raw ingredients come in the back door, in the front, the door, and then for lunchtime you're already doing stuff. You send in stuff that's already been prepared, and it's just a really sort of having that ability as well. It's quite a strong sense of
You're
being able
so
to.
in the right profession. It's
Yeah,
the
thankfully,
right place at the right time, doing the right thing. Wash, rinse, repeat. Off we go again. Up again tomorrow, another 13 hours. What a fantastic cause. And you're doing it so generously too, because it's about giving to others as well and making sure that everyone near to you has food in your mouth, which is fantastic.
Also on a Tuesday now, we go up to Square Food again. We help children that have sort of been permanently excluded from school, help to cook. And seeing, in a small kind of way, we're there for a couple of hours and just seeing like a small way of that sort of changing things, whether it's like a direct thing or not, it just sort of, sometimes you see like a little spark and you're like, and sometimes they won't try anything, and then one day they'll just like have a little taste, and it's such a lovely thing being able to see people like inspired by something you're inspired by as well.
It's a small but a seismic achievement in
Yeah,
something
absolutely,
that they recipe up for themselves.
Definitely, yeah.
Delightful. Thank you. And what about
I'm
you,
gonna say
alchemy and gold?
just pottering about. I feel like I'm always like switched on, like always got to be doing something, or like completing work, finishing things, like there's a lot going on in our lives, and the point where I get to where I've not sort of checked anything or done any work is like.
So is that like a rarity for you?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So yeah, just sort of like pottering around the garden or something like that, and then suddenly realising that you've spent, you know, a good 2 hours just like
Just pottering.
pottering.
And when was your last potter, Tess?
Oh, God.
Too long ago, probably.
Time to get to Thailand, I think, yes.
Yeah. No, we did go on holiday at the end of the school summer holidays, and I had a few days where I was reading a book on a beach, and it was amazing to read a book and not be like, oh, I've read 2 pages and then like fallen asleep and then I can't remember what's happening here. It's like, you know, ploughing through a book is an incredible thing. And to the point where the characters become like, you know, it's like you're watching it on telly because you're so ingrained in it that you've formed like true visual.
Yes, the happy space of being lost within a book.
Yeah.
Escape.
Yeah.
Lovely. And now we're going to award you with a cake. So obviously you're a chef, so do you like cake?
Oh, I love cake. Who doesn't like cake?
So this is the final storytelling metaphor where you get to put a cherry on the cake, and it's a multi-layered cake. I'll ask you, what's your cake flavour of choice, first of all?
Coffee and walnut.
Coffee. Ooh, we've got some.
My
yes.
grandma used to make a great coffee and walnut cake.
Our grandmother's back in the
Yeah.
equation. I love that. The great influences in our life. So coffee and walnut cake. And what flavour for you?
I
Tess?
do like coffee cake, but I'm going to go with Vicky Sponge. You can't beat
Vicky
a good
Sponge.
Victoria Sponge.
We do
They're
like
good.
a cheeky bit of Victoria Sponge. Okay, so the cherry on the cake, metaphorically, is stuff like now a favourite inspirational quote that's always given you succour and pulled you towards your future. And it could be what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given in your lives to date. It could also be what notes, help or advice you might offer to a younger version of yourself. And I told you it's a multi-layered cake because we're coming up to, borrowed from Shakespeare and all the world's a stage and all the men and women he players, I'd finally like you to talk about legacy and how when all is said and done, Boxy, Tess and Elliott would most like to be remembered. So it's a multi-textured cake. So over to you to interpret your cake, please.
I think it's funny when you say quotes out loud, because there's a quote that is, if somebody asked me what's your favourite quote, I have it. It's like, it is my favourite quote. I haven't got it tattooed on me or anything like that, but it's there. But if I like say it out loud, it's kind of like, so my quote is, it is not the mountain we conquer but ourselves. And it's what Edmund Hillary apparently said when he conquered Everest.
Can I give you a high five for that one? And just say it again to reincorporate it, 'cause it's lovely.
It is not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves. So I was like, from a very young age, became obsessed with Everest. And my dad had this book, and it was like a picture book, but for adults, like of Everest and a particular expedition of this one man in more modern times, but not like now, who it was like how he prepared for his expedition. And I saw it, I don't know, when I was probably about 8 or something like that, and I was like, I'm going to climb Everest. I'm going to do it. And then it was, I don't know, a couple of years before I turned 30, and I was like, oh, I still haven't climbed Everest. Like, what's going on? So Elliott and I decided that we would climb to Everest Base Camp before I turned 30, because I was like, I'm going to do it before I'm 30. I'm going to do it before I'm 30. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to climb Everest before I'm 30, but I'll climb to Base Camp. So we went, and it's funny how in doing some things you realise you are never going to do the other thing. And when we got to Everest Base Camp, I remember having a realisation that I would never, ever, ever climb Everest or want to.
And that's okay.
And that is okay,
Yeah.
and that is okay. My friend said to me the other day, actually, when she did the half marathon, she was like, one thing I've realised about myself is that I'm never going to run a marathon. And it's like,
I'm in
you've
that camp.
achieved something, but you know that the other thing actually
Other people
isn't
can do that.
necessary. Yeah. But I like this quote because, I don't know, I also feel like, oh, did he actually say that? Or like, you know, it's like if I had just climbed Everest, like, and somebody said, oh, how are you? I'd be like, you know, I'd probably be crying that I didn't do it in whatever time or what. But you know, like it's the thought that he's like composed this amazing quote.
We'll
but
like
I
to
like
think we'll come up with our Neil Armstrong small
yeah,
step for man.
yeah,
Huge step for
exactly.
mankind.
Yeah, but I like it because it's like, you know, it's not everything in life. It's not about the thing that you've done. It's about what that influence has had on yourself, or how, or you know, what you've been able to achieve personally. So it's not, you know, climbing Everest, or it's not moving to a new city independently, or you know.
Yeah, you're climbing your metaphorical Everest
exactly.
perpetually. I
Yeah,
would say.
yeah. So I like it.
My quote is not as beautiful as that one, but is a sort of classic kitchen quote is push on, lads. That was always what we had when the head chef would come in, just push on. And as sort of simple as it is, when you're digging deep in the kitchen, you know, doing like a long day, and you've got an awful lot to do before a lunch service or a dinner service, and sometimes you just got to dig deep and just get on with it.
Push on, lads.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's the same in, in life, really. You know, it's like sometimes you just need to push on and get on with it.
And the question on everyone's lips, by the way, do you have the fridge magnet that says "push on, lads"?
No, but I want one now. I don't want one.
We should get that ordered up for you, especially. Wonderful. So we're still in the multi-layered cake. So what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Again, another kitchen one. Never put a knife in a sink. Simple as that. I've still got on my fingers. I've seen something horrible with when someone didn't do that, and if you live your life with that quote, you'll be fine. Wow. You'll be all right.
Never put a knife
In a sink. A sharp knife in a sink.
Yeah.
And every time I go to a sink with a knife, I'm just not in the sink. Top advice.
Wise advice indeed. Lovely. And now let's talk about. Are you ready to talk about legacy now and how you'd most like to remember it, or what notes, help, or advice first of all would you offer to your younger self? Would you say? It's a bit like talking to your daughters, really.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's the kind of joint together. Like my dad has a thing that he says, and it's rise above it. Just rise above it, and it's like don't let yourself get bogged down in. Yeah. You know, somebody else's business, or you know, like it doesn't need to sort of bother you. But for me, I would say, like, to go back to my younger self, I would say don't let the sort of overwhelmingness of not being able to, you know, change the world or save all the people stop you acting. There's a like. This makes me sound like I'm always sort of quoting things, but there are a few quotes that I like, you know, they kind of like power you on, and there's one by Howard Zinn, and it's something about we can't wait for a grand utopian future to you know, to do things. It doesn't work like that. If we're waiting for the right moment to do something, that moment's never going to come.
So do it now, really.
Do it, exactly.
The tree incorporates your earlier sage-like quote as well, which I can't quite remember what it was, but it was like that. Do it now. Okay, so now we're on to Shakespeare and all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. When all is said and done, Tess and Elliott Lidstone, Boxy, how would you most like to be remembered?
I think just being part of people's celebrations, like we have so many people coming for anniversaries, big birthdays, weddings, all sorts of things, and just being like that. Well, it's in, you know, whether it's not just about the food, but the whole sort of thing is we're just being part of that little special thing that you always think of, you know, remembering like special occasions, and you always look fondly back at them. Just being some small way being part of that. And when we were in lockdown, we did, and we still do it at Christmas time, we cure some sea trout, and people come and buy it from us. And
sea trout?
Sea trout, yeah. And we cure it in the gin botanicals from Psychopomp. And people sort of sending messages on their Christmas day of like, oh, and it's just like, you know, just being even sort of far away, just being part of that lovely kind of their special day and whatever it might be. But yeah,
it's like the best bit of being Ebenezer Scrooge, when everyone's really happy. And Tiny Tim's fed and he's still alive, and he's got a smoked trout in his jowls. How lovely! And to you,
I think that is like an amazing thing. Like, and it said until he said about that, I thought, oh, I hadn't really thought of it that way. It's like on Saturday we've got a wedding, and I thought, isn't it amazing that people choose to come here for their wedding, and like we've got the power to kind of make that day special for them, and so I'd say those like the ripple effect of having a small positive, and how that sort of goes out into the world, and what you do with that. I don't think I want any sort of grand, ta-da. Like when we were little, my brother and I would watch This Is Your Life, and I don't think we had a clue who the people were on it ever, but I always had this mindset that everybody got a red book and be like, this is your red life, and this is your life, and I don't know why it's always stuck with me that like when you die, that's what happens.
Well, this is sort of metaphorically your red book. I'm doing it for you now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's done now. But I have very set things on how I don't want to be remembered.
Okay, do you want to go there? Or?
But,
and what I'm getting as a catch-all from you both is you're fed as well in your outlook and your attitude, and also the fact that, I don't mean your attitude, I mean the whole outlook of what you're providing here as Boxy. In a couple of moments I'm going to throw it open to the floor to ask you some questions based on what we've heard. But as this has been your moment in the sunshine within the Good Listening To show, is there anything else you'd like to say in the journey and the process of what I've been curating you through?
No, I think it's sort of just been, well, like we were saying, 6 years anniversary of being Boxy, and it's just been quite a good journey, really. Like just seeing, also like going back to the inspirational thing with like Tess, and she's very sort of on it with charity stuff, as we were saying before, and like with constantly small things, making taking lots of money from contributions for charity, and that's quite a nice thing to, like a legacy as well, sort of all those little things that add up and help in, like the ripple effect we were saying.
Yes.
Just like going through the community and hopefully making changes, small changes, big changes. Yeah, I don't think until we opened Boxy, I was talking to Tess a little while ago about it, and until we opened to Boxy, I never really thought how much of an impact it could make. And that's kind of, it's quite a big, when you look back at it. Well, it's not finished yet, we've still got to go.
And that's it.
Close the doors tonight, we're on holiday.
Congratulations. The passage of time is such that I didn't even know it was 6 years.
Yeah.
I've been
it's
coming for a
crazy,
couple of years, 2, 3, 4, I didn't know it was 6, but many, many congratulations. When's the actual date of that as your anniversary?
It's the 18th of October, and our wedding anniversary is the 15th of October. So it's always like tied together with
So 6 at Boxy, and how many years will you have been married this October?
12, and we'll have been together for 16.
Oh, wonderful. So to end this particular part, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Tess and Elliott Lidstone from Boxy. Quick round of applause for them. And now, if I can find where did I put that microphone bouncy thing that I could throw at people? Oh, does anybody have any questions for Tess or Elliott? Just hold that and enjoy talking over it. That's perfect positioning, actually. Over to you, sir. What's your name?
So we've been coming here for, it's Mark. Maya, we've been coming here for many years. Really love the place. I just wondered, I think this is your first restaurant in Cargo?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just wonder how Cargo has been for you, and then a supplementary question, it's going soon, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And how do you feel about that, and what are the future plans from that?
Well, we've been, like we said, 6 years, and we sort of found it by accident, really. We were looking at somewhere, we were living in Hackney, and we were looking for somewhere to open. Well, our one-bedroom flat was getting a bit small for the four of us. And so we were looking at options, what we could do, and Bristol kind of made an obvious choice. Tess from Bristol, and Tess's parents still here. And we happened to be back in Bristol as they announced Cargo. The development before it was even, when it was still rubble basically. Yeah. And one thing led to another. We met Stuart there from the managing director of the site, and we just got on and clicked. And this was in fact the last unit not to be sold, or not to be.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it hadn't been built yet, but it was on plan. It was the last one, and we love it. Yeah, I think.
And as Marcus just said, it's changing again soon. So is Stuart, is that the right name?
Yeah.
And has he got your back? Is he making sure that you get a unit where you're going next?
Yeah, well, I mean, we always, from when we first opened, it was only ever going to be 5 years, the planning permission, and obviously it's now 6 already.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen. Well, basically, we're going to be picked up, popped over there. We're going to knock this down, rebuild, and then we can go back in if we want to. But nothing's going to happen for a few years, so there's no.
We don't have to make any decisions.
Yeah, we're not in any
just
Not just yet.
knee-jerk decisions.
If I may,
Of course you can, Mark. Supplementary question.
supplementary question, no conferring. So will you have to close, or will they build before you have to move out?
The plan is, well, I think the people, it'll close for a short time while they pick up and move everything.
Yeah, for a very brief time, they would take these shipping containers, move them to the car park, build so we could trade
Oh, marvellous.
in this, but just in a different
That's
position.
almost the plan, isn't it?
Yeah, then they would build the permanent thing, you could fit it out while you were still trading, and then you could move back in.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, good. Good news.
Thank you, Mark, for your Captain's Log supplemental as well. Any other questions from the audience for Elliott or Tess? Oh, there you go, sir. Thank you very much.
You're in here as part of a community of restaurants.
Yeah.
How has that influenced, do you think, the capability of the product and the positioning of restaurants in general here?
I think it's a really positive thing. Like everyone, obviously know most people here now, and we buy like from the cheesemonger, for example. We buy cheese from them. Just being part of the community, I think. Really. And like everyone sort of helps each other. Tess is on like steering committee for pushing Wop and Wharf and positive things, and yeah, it's
That support that you
Yeah.
get with more than you on your own is massive. And knowing, simple things like if you've forgotten something or something, part of your order didn't come through, or you can go, like we pop next door, they pop next to us. Like, it's so lovely to have that that network of support. But it also strengthens the area. It's like you guys know, it's a destination. It's it is a lovely place to wander around, and in bringing more people here, they see the other places as well, and there's strength in that togetherness, and it's not really competition. It just kind of encourages people to do more of the thing that they like. So eat out more, but go to more coffee shops. It generally doesn't dilute your own guests. It just sort of encourages people to come back more often.
and the same, not just for Cardiff, I think for Bristol as a whole, really. Like it's just such a really good community, and there's such a strong sort of sense of that, and everyone kind of knows each other, and there's again, if someone needs something desperately, they'll, everyone's on a WhatsApp group now, isn't it? There's hundreds of them, but there's like a big sort of a community for that, and so it's just like any problems, any advice. I need stove's broken, anybody know the fridge is broken, straight away someone will
Has Sandra broken down? That's
touch wood.
That's
Not yet.
Not
She's
yet.
not-
No,
Touch
God,
wood.
don't jinx it now, please. We're tomorrow.
I think I must go and meet Sandra in a minute, actually. Thank you for that question. And a supplementary question. There you go. Thank you.
Well, I was just going to say, Tess, firstly, you said you didn't know if you made a difference by doing what you do as far as the things you did, especially over COVID. And I think, we all have to accept when we do things, they make a difference. Even if they're small, they make a difference. And if we weren't doing them, life would be a lot worse than it is. So congratulations on what you did, which brought me back to COVID. And I remember a conversation with Elliott about 2 days before lockdown when he said, we're supposed to be going to a wine fair this weekend, but it's been cancelled. And we went, oh yeah, that. And within 2 days we're in lockdown. And this place, and I have to say, we live like Elliott and Tess, we live here. So we've been here 6 years as well. This place changed drastically overnight, and we did become a community. We did get to know our neighbours. We all got to know our neighbours. We all got to know the restaurants as well, and people who would do kind of meals for families and everything. It was amazing. It was a completely changed community. And it's been good to see it come back, because I really worried about it at that point.
Yes.
I thought it was never going to come back. I looked out, and it was desolate. It was as though you were going to see tumbleweed coming down
Yes.
the pavement. It was awful, and I thought we would never get it back, and we did. We did get it back, and it's great. But well done for what you're doing, because I think, don't ever think you don't make a difference, because you do. And by doing what you're doing, I'm a teacher. I taught technology, food technology at one point. You're making a big difference if you've got people who have been excluded from school. You're making a huge difference.
Thank you for that wonderful comment and statement too. Sorry. Any other questions? Rule of three. Oh yes, madam. Here you are. Can I throw this to you? Oh yes, you caught it.
I told you I would ask one. We're not only known for our food, we're known for our wine list. So what's your favourite wine, both of you? What would you choose to drink?
Off the list.
Off the list, yeah.
Maybe the Rusto.
Yeah, Elliott would definitely go big red. I would just go Riesling all the way. That is a good wine, though. It's a great wine.
In fact, thank you for holding up a bottle. Perfectly on cue. Riesling
Yeah.
all the way. So, any final questions? So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being part of a world premiere experiment. If you don't mind, my son Stan at the back there will be whistling round with some feedback forms. As this has been a world premiere, it will be fantastic to get your very frank feedback about what you thought about this evening's experience. But thank you very much indeed. Here comes Stan. We've also got somebody called Ollie who's taken the photographs today, so Stan and Ollie are in the building. How awesome is that? And I'd also sincerely like to thank Chris and Pete from a company called Spiralux, who've actually been streaming this live to Facebook and YouTube simultaneously. Hurrah! So I've been Chris Grimes. This has been the Good Listening To Show. Good night! Come on, Stan. There's a free pen in it for you as well.